They were massive. They were powerful. They were worshipped as gods. But they weren't divine. They were abominations, half angel, half human, half nightmare fuel. Like the worst family reunion heaven never approved. Born of the fallen angels and human women, these weren't just legends. They were Nephilim. And every time you hear about Hercules, Gilgamesh, or Horus, you're not just hearing fantasy. You're hearing spiritual propaganda. Agent PR campaigns from demonic spawns, influencers who made Goliath look like a JV lineman. Welcome to the Truth Seekers. I'm your host Josh, and this is Gods of the Fallen, Episode 3, The Rise of the Demigods. Get ready, because today we're pulling back the mask of every so-called hero you grew up admiring, and exposing the spiritual nightmare behind the myth. Yeah, I said it. This episode might ruin your childhood. Because those heroes, they weren't there to save the day. They were here to conquer it. Giants among men, the original Nephilim. Genesis 6:4 gives us the setup. The Nephilim were on the earth in those days, and also afterward. And when the sons of God went to the daughters of humans, and they had children by them, they were heroes of old, men of renown. Now let's look at that word renown. The word renown in the Hebrew doesn't mean something honorable. No, it means infamous. So in other words, these were the giants, the tyrants, the monster kings your ancient ancestors had nightmares about. And TikTok will probably call them motivational creators today. See, they were big. Bigger than men. Like you would need a new zip code to fit through the door. That big. They were stronger than most armies and hungry for domination. Like your algorithm is hungry for your soul. And when they died, their spirits didn't go to heaven or hell. No. They stayed here. Their spirits became demons. Before that, they ruled. See, if the Watchers were teachers, and the Nephilim were their legacy, and that legacy still echoes today, only now they wear capes, star in movies, and have action figures. Echoes in every culture. The Bible calls them Nephilim, but the world remembers them by different names. In Greece, it's names like Hercules, Perseus, Achilles. In Mesopotamia, it's Gilgamesh and Humbaba. In Egypt, it's Horus and Anubis. In India, it's Krishna and the Pavanian brothers. In Canada, it's Anakim, Rahim, and Zenzum. Different names, same beings. And let's be real, the marketing team is the same too. These guys had better branding than Nike. And here's the wild part. They all have the same storyline. Born from gods, possessing superhuman strength. They were often giants, and they were always glorified. It was like a copy and paste template handed down across culture, across nations, one right after another. Why? Because it was. They didn't just rule kingdoms. They franchised deception like a spiritual Starbucks. The Nephilim weren't just local legends. They were global rulers. And the myths that we inherited are the memories with makeup on them. Basically, Asian reality TV edited by demons to make them look like heroes instead of hybrid tyrants. Mythology is the Nephilim's highlight reel, edited by demons. Giants? After the flood? But wait, didn't the flood wipe them all out? Well, yes and no. Genesis 6:4 says the Nephilim were on the earth in those days, and also afterward. Afterward, post flood. So, plot twist, you thought the water wiped them all out. But some of the bloodlines were harder to kill than your favorite movie villain. Whether by survival or return or second rebellion, the giants came back. And the Israelites faced them in Enoch and Rahim. Goliath was a descendant of the giants. And then you have Og of Bashan. This dude had a 13-foot long bed. That's not a king. That's a kaiju with a headboard. God didn't give the Israelites war instructions for fun. He gave them marching orders to clear out the remaining spiritual corruption. This wasn't a colonization. It was contamination control. See, these weren't just enemies of Israel. They were the bloodline of rebellion, still walking on the earth. Have you ever wondered why God said to the Israelites, wipe all of them out? When you realize who were the giants, the command suddenly becomes clear. Bloodlines of rebellion. Why God commanded genocide. Why did God command Israel to wipe out entire tribes? Deuteronomy chapter 20, verses 16 through 18 tells us, you shall save alive nothing that breathes, that they may not teach you according to their abominable practices. See, that's not God being cruel. That's God cutting out an infection, like a divine surgeon dealing with a spiritual tumor before it spreads and kills the whole patient. These tribes weren't innocent. They were remnants of the Nephilim bloodline, spiritually and genetically corrupted, walking in skin. The Anakim were descendants of Enoch. The Rahim tied to the realm of the dead, and Zezum, whose name literally sounds like a warning siren. These weren't just enemies of Israel. They were walking blaspheming, genetic landmines with egos the size of their own heads. And their spirits hated God's order. God wasn't erasing cultures. He was erasing corruption. Let's stop pretending ancient death cults with giants and child sacrifices were misunderstood art collectives. You can't reform a bloodline that was never meant to exist. How demigods became gods. Mythology's greatest cover-up. So what happened after the giants died? Their bodies may have fallen, but their legends, they rose. And the farther we got from the truth, the more the Nephilim became gods in the stories. Hercules wasn't just a hero. He was a hybrid killer who got turned into a demigod idol. Gilgamesh wasn't just a king. He was a giant tyrant, obsessed with immortality. Horus wasn't just a symbol. He was the child of the fallen lineage, turned into Egypt's national brand. The mythologies didn't forget the giants. They put halos on hellspawns and told us to worship them. The real story was buried under gold, glory, and temple walls. And today, we put them in movies, we call them heroes, we sell them as action figures and dress them up like saviors. You thought you were watching Marvel. Turns out you were watching a highlight reel for fallen genetics. Which mythology hero do you think are Nephilim in disguise? Drop in the comments. Let's pull the mess off together. Why giants still matter. Let's be real. This isn't just about ancient history. Jesus said, as it was in the days of Noah, so it will be and the coming of the Son of Man. Matthew 24:37. That means what happened back then will happen again. And what exactly happens in Noah's day? The sons of God were taking human wives, the Nephilim were roaming the earth, humanity was being genetically and spiritually corrupted. Violence, wickedness, and demonic chaos filled the earth. Does all that sound familiar? Because today, we've got genetic modifications, hybrid embryos. They just created a dire wolf out of genetic modifications. Artificial intelligence playing God with consciousness, alien gods in pop culture, and Asian astronaut theories on mainstream TVs. Celebrities literally calling themselves gods and avatars. It's not just weird, it's strategic. You think it's all science fiction. Meanwhile, the enemy's out there running prequels to the tribulation, dressed up in lab coats and Netflix documentaries. We're being primed for a return, not just of deception, but the same spiritual playbook that triggered the flood. This isn't evolution, this is decreation. Look, someone took the Genesis blueprint, scribbled it with a demonic crayons, and said, let's improve God's design. A recycled rebellion dressed up in futuristic packaging. Because nothing says progress like falling for the same lie twice. Only this time, it has Wi-Fi connections and crisper genetic editing. What a twist. The return of the gods might look like the future, but in reality, it's a reboot of a nightmare. So what's the end game? Why the demigods are rising again? Here's what the enemy doesn't want you to see. The demigods are making a comeback. Not with clubs and sandals, but with tech, media, false religion, and alien disclosures. They're prepping the world for agent hybrids again. They're normalizing rebellion through hero culture and are conditioning the masses to trade worship for wonder. It's not just deception, it's an invitation into bondage. And the spirits behind it, they're not hiding, they're hosting on your feed, on your screen, on your stage. Do you think the world is being primed to accept the return of the gods? Let's talk about it in the comments, because deception is getting louder. Demigods, disclosure, and the final deception. Let's put it all together and rip the mask off while we're at it. The gods of the ancient world were the children of rebellion, and the world still honors them today. They were the giants of Genesis, the idols of mythology, and the heroes of nations. And soon, they'll be the saviors of a world gone blind. You think it's all just entertainment. Why do you think the biggest movies, games, and shows all show worship of gods, demigods, and alien creators? Because the narrative is being rebuilt. Hollywood isn't just telling stories. They're prepping minds for the ancient gods rebrand tour. The stage is being set, and the return won't be announced with thunder. It'll come wrapped in awe, technology, and universal wisdom. Aliens, ascended masters, quantum overlords, the next evolutionary step. Pick your poison. Satan's marketing team has a wide range of them. They'll call it enlightenment. But it's all the same old lie. You shall be as gods. The deception won't look evil. It'll look divine. It'll come with a glowing smile universal peace, and a TikTok algorithm that makes your worship it in 15 seconds or less. Final warning: spotting the demigods before they rise. Here's the bottom line: the world is prepared for the return of these so called gods. And if we don't recognize them, well, we'll re worship them again. They're already shaping our entertainment. While rebellion is sexy and truth is concealed, our science, where we play God but deny God, our education, where mythology gets more respect than scripture, and even our churches, where the fear of God has been replaced with a feel good nonsense. But truth seekers, we don't bow down to ancient lies in new clothes. No, we expose them. We call them what they are. We prepare for war. If sharing this opens one set of eyes, that's kingdom work. That's a seed. That's enough. Next, we're going to take on the Mount Rushmore of mythology: Zeus, Hades, Poseidon, Apollo, Ares. Were these just Greek legends, or echoes of the real fallen powers who ruled the post-flood world? Get ready to trace the Greek pantheon straight back to Genesis, the Watchers, and the Nephilim. Because episode 4 is about to expose the Olympian deception and burn the fake divinity right off Mount Olympus. Until next time, stay curious, stay engaged, and as always, stay truthful.